Well, good day, good afternoon, good golly, Miss Molly. I figured I was going to do a little video about some gaming stuff I wanted to talk about, but I thought, what the hell? Let's just go live, see what's happening, see who's around. I know there's probably multiple other live streams on right now, but yeah, no, I got time to kill. So, do a quick live stream, talk about some gaming stuff. Hail, Stephen. Good to see you. There will be no buffet. In fact, there will be no food of any kind, although there is some whiskey in the background. As you can see, my studio is currently super empty right now. So it's a bit echoey in here, but I'm packed up, ready to move. So that's, yeah, it's awful bare. And, packing all that. Hey, Sean, packing all that stuff was fun as usual. Hopefully, it's the last time I ever have to pack it all. Moving out of this temporary apartment into a new house. So, and where I'll have a very low spec. Nice to see you, buddy. And I'll have a really, really great looking studio set up there. It'll be pretty good. So, looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to the actual move, which is across provinces, and I'll be doing most of it myself with the help of a couple of friends to load and unload. But that's life. Sometimes you got to do the hard work to get the good stuff. So yeah, I hope you're all having a great day. Thanks for joining me at such short notice for this impromptu little chat on games. I am something of a gamer. I'd never claim I was hardcore gamer per se. I've spent or wasted many thousands of hours on games though, and mainly RPGs. And I'm not a multiplayer guy. I'm much more of a single player RPG guy. But at the same time, I do love. There's nothing quite like sitting for hours, hour after hour, just losing yourself in a great character in a game. Or so yeah, I'm kind of a gamer, an old gamer. And I try to keep in touch with what's going on with the gaming world. So here's a few items that I'm relatively interested in. First of all, The Last of Us. Now, this is more of a TV than a gaming item, but I've been following this with a little bit of interest. Last of Us HBO star Bella Ramsey reveals she was encouraged not to play the game before filming. So that headline alone encapsulates an awful lot of what is wrong with our entertainment franchises today. Questions abound. Why was she encouraged not to play the game? Given that the first Last of Us game, in my opinion, is an absolute classic with a brilliant and compelling story of a father figure and his, in a sense, adopted daughter, adopted through the trials that they went through and the sacrifices that were made at the end of that story, which were incredibly emotional. The first thing I see when I see a headline like this is that they are determined to change the story from the original game, in effect, to rewrite history in the way that they did with the abominable piece of intersectional garbage that was The Last of Us Part 2 game. Imagine, Stephen, imagine if they said the same thing to the. Anyway, he's retracted that, but I'll hide that. So, I have no great hopes for this show. Naughty Dog are dead to me because of what they've done, but I still find it interesting. And indeed, although Naughty Dog are dead to me, if the show had intended to be a faithful recreation of the first game, maybe I would have given it a chance. Right now, I don't feel inclined to. So HBO has finally unveiled its first trailer for the small screen debut of their Last of Us series. And while the studio undoubtedly hoped it would get fans hyped for what's to come, a subsequent revelation from lead actress Bella Ramsey may have severely blunted the surrounding excitement. And I agree with them. Immediately they open their mouths, whether it be Pablo there, or this actress, or the studio, or HBO, immediately they open their mouths. It just puts me off. And they just do this stuff so often, you know. So Pedro Pascal there, of course, has been not slow to shoot his mouth off a number of times about things. And this Bella Ramsey playing Ellie. This isn't particularly her saying something. She's saying what they've told her to do, so I can't necessarily blame her for this. But the key bit in this article is when it gets down to, however, one group who will likely find themselves disappointed to some extent are the original game series diehard fans. Now, that would be me, because I loved that game. Loathed what they did to the second one. Those in charge of bringing Naughty Dog's world to life have apparently taken an ignore the source material approach to The Last of Us. How often have we seen that recently? And, and it's not often that I comment directly on my channel on these kind of things, but this a continual desecration of source material is just becoming tiresome and counterproductive in all sorts of ways. We all know that. So asked during a recent interview with USA Today if she had played the game at all before signing on, Ramsey admitted, "I was actually encouraged not to play the game that her character is entirely based upon, and indeed reflects her character extremely well in a very positive way. After my first audition, they asked me, 'Have you played it?' And I said, 'Nope.' And they said, 'We'll keep it that way.' She playfully explained, but I did watch some of the gameplay on YouTube just to get a sense of it." That's like saying, well, I've read the Cliff Notes on Tolkien, so I know everything about Tolkien, and, or whatever parallel you can draw. But, I mean, you would think that at least you would, why not rebel against the studio and try and play it anyway, So, not entirely. I mean, you couldn't make it any worse. I think these are statements that could not be any worse than they are for dampening down. And there's another article. The Last of Us star Pedro Pascal says he wanted to create a healthy distance between live action series and the original game. So, what's a healthy distance and why? Why a distance at all, and why is that healthy? The original game was a massive success. It was excellent in all sorts of ways. Why would that be a healthy thing? Again, they just say these things, like the phrases we get around, well, it needs to be modernized or a modern take or blah, blah. Why? If the original material was popular, beloved, effective, and great storytelling, why change it? Other than specific changes necessary in order to tailor a property in one format for another, such as television, from game to television. Anyway, don't want to linger on that. It certainly extinguishes a lot of hope I had that maybe they would have salvaged something, but clearly Naughty Dog and HBO are determined to make what they believe to be The Last of Us, not the original. So what else is going on? An interesting series of articles online recently about remakes of games and remasters of games, and I have particularly agree with this one on laptop, not a site I've used very often before. PlayStation needs to stop remastering everything and leave Horizon Zero Dawn alone. Now, I actually enjoyed Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West very much. And Horizon Zero Dawn itself is, what, 5 years old at most? Maybe 5 years. Yeah, I agree with you, Stephen. It's studio suppression and also putting a message in their mouths and using them as their mouthpieces. Now, some of that's willing, but I think the actress there in particular, as being a younger actress, perhaps would be easier to control for the studio. And I wish she would say to them, "I'm going to play the game. I want to see what it's all about and what my character's based on." But yeah, this remake strategy is and remastering strategy is perhaps getting out of control. Although I'm going to be a hypocrite and say there's a couple of examples that I'm quite keen on, one of which is we're going to talk about in a little while, which is Dead Space. I think a graphical update of that is actually an excellent idea. But the counterpart to that is things like Horizon Zero Dawn is not an old game. It's, yes, there's Forbidden West sequel is out. The original game doesn't look that bad. It's only 5 years old. I went in and had another look at it the other day on the PS4, and it looks fine. So I feel there is a dollar chasing thing going on here. I understand they want to take certain PS4 properties and update them to perhaps PS5 levels. Then again, the PS5 is only now starting to get traction with sales, given the difficulty of getting hold of one. So I think a lot of it is, again, this takes valuable resources from making new properties, and it's new properties we want to see, whether it be in TV or gaming. I certainly want to see exciting new games, not continual rehashes of old games. So you do mention the Ghost of Tsushima director's cut, which I mean, I don't have a PS5, and I'm very satisfied with the PS4 version. I'm sure it played very well on PS5, so I'm not sure why too much remastering of that would be required. The Death Stranding director's cut, if they're adding new content, fine. So, Stephen, yeah, how do these remakes affect the original version's contract definition? Are they stepping around the OG talent? I actually am not sure about that. I mean, a lot of the OG talent will still be involved with any remakes. Some will be anyway. Remastering is a different thing because you're still going to get the same voice actors. In terms of the developer talent, a lot of them will not be around or not there, I would imagine, because they move on rather rapidly when the job is over. They got to work, and their work, it's a gig economy for a lot of those guys. And as we've seen with a lot of studios, a lot of OG talent has moved on pretty swiftly from EA, CD Projekt Red, other studios, when they feel that their vision of the games they've been making is no longer required. Bethesda and others, it happens a lot. But yeah, to do Horizon Zero Dawn again, not entirely sure that's a great idea. Certainly, I mean, there's no way I would be expending cash on something that I can still play particularly well on a PS4. Ground up remake of Dead Space, I feel, is possibly a different situation. And it is an older game, and it would be great to see those visuals remastered. So, but the other obsession with the remakes, and they're all doing it. It's not just Sony. I think Sony's actually a little bit desperate because they don't have that many properties, given Xbox's dominance in buying studios, or Microsoft's dominance. Sony's running out of a little runway, I think. So they're obviously looking for ways to keep product going out there, and taking properties they own and redoing them is an easy way for them to do that, or an easier way. But yeah, charging full price again for games that people loved in the original iterations, if they're only a few years old, I think is a bad move. Older games like Final Fantasy VII, Dead Space, I could possibly see it. But yeah, Shadow of the Colossus, for instance, I don't think that game requires a remaster. If it takes up a large amount of resources to make that, and it's going to cost $75 to buy, who's going to do that? So seems like a waste. I agree with this article. Allocating artists towards remastering a game that isn't old seems strange. And it does seem like a desperate cash grab in many instances. However, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, and then because I do think the Dead Space remake is one that I would be interested in. Hopefully I won't get any copyright issues if that video kicks in. I'll make sure I don't cover it too much, but this is a game I think will benefit, and I am interested in seeing a really sharp, graphically updated, sound remastered version of. According to this article, the Dead Space remake will feature a game rebuilt in the new and shiny Frostbite engine. And as with any remake, players can expect improved audio visuals with additional narrative additions. I think this one may work if they do not change the original and canonical items in the game. There will be no loading screens or camera cuts, according to senior producer Philippe Ducharme, which I think is actually a good idea. Attempts have been made in several games to do get away with loading screens, and a smoother experience in that respect would be nice. So a one-take experience they're talking about. So I'm actually relatively hopeful about this. I will never be pre-ordering anything. Those days are gone. I wait and see now how it's going. I'm sure you guys are the same. Wait and see how it goes. So there won't be any pre-ordering going, and I certainly won't be ordering a $275 collector's edition. Those days are gone too. However, I'm encouraged by the thought of the game. That game looking really sharp and playing really well, and I'll be a PC player for it because I'm going full PC pretty much going forward. I don't see me buying another console, not unless they become dirt cheap. And I noticed that there is a you can buy this one slightly cheaper if you're on EA Play, which of course is the Origin replacement, because Origin is disappearing and everything's being ported over to EA Play. I have to say the only reason I ever had Origin was pretty much because I was forced to have it in order to own certain EA games like Mass Effect Legendary Edition and so on. I don't think it's ever added anything to my gaming experience, and I certainly don't play anything cloud-wise. So for me, it was just another irritation that got between me and Steam in a sense. I mean, I'm a big Steam user, so having to have another thing in between was, what's the point of that, But yeah, EA Origins is switching over to EA Play. Clearly, you can get some discount on games like the Dead Space remastering. I think maybe a 10% is the thing if you're signed up for the non-pro version of that. I'll probably have, because I have to for certain games, have that non-pro version. Can't see me having anything that would want me to get the pro version of EA Play. So anyway, Dead Space Remaster, certainly very keen on that. From a PC version for me. This is interesting though, and I wonder if this would ever come about with John Carpenter, who is a bit of a gamer and fan of games, still wants to direct a Dead Space movie and can't stop playing Fallout 76. Well, the second part of that headline is like meh, but the fact that he wants to direct a Dead Space movie, I think he would be a great director for that. And I'd love to see that movie. Halloween director John Carpenter is a big fan of video games, and with more and more games being adapted for the silver screen, he remains interested in directing a Dead Space movie. Now, is there going to be such a movie? Would he even be in the frame for it? He certainly is semi-retired, or has been for a while. But hey, if ever there was a guy that I would have picked in the past to direct such a movie, it would have been one of my favourite directors, John Carpenter. It's the only one he can think of that he wants to direct, and it would make a great movie, and he could do that. So, you know, maybe if the remaster is a big success, movie talk wouldn't be far behind. And to be honest, I'd prefer a movie to a TV series. So, we shall see. But he seems to be enjoying Fallout 76, so who knows why. Yeah, Stephen, there's an awful lot of gouging going on in gaming. This is why I no longer pre-order. I wait till games are out, till I've seen reviews from people I trust, that I've experienced gameplay videos online, and that very often I wait until the prices dropped off. Now, I've only just bought Cyberpunk 2077 after, 2 years? Because price had dropped to half price. I feel enough fixes were in place and additional content to make it worth playing. And I certainly didn't feel like playing it at full price on release. And as we know, that release was a bit of a disaster. And I do want to talk about CD Projekt Red. Yeah, pre-ordering is no longer a good policy. I used to do a lot of pre-orders and get the gear, but I don't any longer. I want to see if the game is going to be any good. So gouging, yeah, I'm not going to take part in their gouging. I mean, I feel like getting Cyberpunk 2077 at $35 was worth it, given it's had a lot of fixes put in. And I did watch Edge Runners on Netflix, which kind of prompted me to go look and think about it again. And so far, I'm enjoying it. I mean, I've got a couple of glitches that are impacting my PC play on it, but I'm sure I'll figure those out. Yeah, pre-ordering anything is even for properties you believe you're going to love from studios you trust is just not worth it anymore. They got to prove themselves. They're putting out too many shoddy products, too many remakes, too many remasters, too many ported rip-offs. But yeah, I would be interested in a John Carpenter Dead Space, just as I'm interested in the remastered version of the game, and I'll be looking forward to watching more videos about that to judge for myself whether it will be worth getting or not. So speaking of CD Projekt Red, which we were briefly, there's some good and some bad. The bad may outweigh the good. And now that they seem to have got to grips with Cyberpunk 2077 and fixed it, they've announced a number of plans for things that they're going to games they're going to make and IPs they're going to work on going forward. Some of that may be good news, but there's a corresponding piece of bad news, which I'm going to get to in a minute. So Cyberpunk 2077 is going to get a sequel. I think there is still some DLC material to come to the current version. They're going to start working on a sequel. I think I would have preferred in a la GTA if they had considered building the existing world up on the current game base a little more before leaping to a... Yeah, I agree. So $30 wasn't so bad for 2077. I think it's worth $30. I don't think it was worth whatever ridiculous amounts people paid for pre-ordered deluxe versions. Yeah, the Cyberpunk. I wish I'd like to have seen them build that world up a little more. Now that they've got a stable base game to work from, I think I would have preferred them to expand some resources in expanding that world and giving more people more to do in the current game than to immediately leap to making a second one. Because those resources are immediately going to go to that. So the current game will remain pretty much as it is, albeit there's a DLC expansion with a name Phantom Library. I don't know whether that's a code name or the real name. So we shall see. It's currently codenamed Cyberpunk Orion. They feel they need to move on to another installment. I'm not so sure about that. Hey, Lindsay, good to see you. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me on this. What really was just an impromptu. I'd sat down to make a video about this. I thought, sod it, I'll just go live. Normally, I'm a video prepping guy. I like to take my time, do the editing, collect my thoughts. Today, I'm giving you the meat, and I'm giving you it raw. But it's good to see you all here. Thanks for joining me. Anyway, that's the Cyberpunk news. They are working on a follow-up. I can't see that being ready for 4 or 5 years, though, so I hope they continue to devote resources to the current game, now that I'm getting into it. Witcher announcements. Well, The Witcher 3 is... these things change from day to day, but I would consider it to be... Hey, Stephen. Deleted scenes. How are you, buddy? Glad you're on a break. We were on a break. Witcher 3, I've often considered my favourite game of all time. It kind of moves. I mean, if I was to be asked at gunpoint, I'd say Fallout New Vegas, but Witcher 3 is in the top 3 for sure. Played it multiple times. Sometimes I go into that game now, even just to ride around on Roach and look at stuff, because I've played virtually everything you can do in that game I've done, but it's just such a beautiful game. So we're all keen to see what they're going to do with it. Now, they've talked about a new trilogy. So there will be a Witcher 4, which will be the start of a new trilogy. And they've said it's not going to be focused on Geralt. And I think that's fair enough, because Geralt's story has been told. It does leave a lot of questions around whose story it's really going to be. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Because I've certainly been, whilst I've enjoyed parts of the Netflix Witcher show, there are some disturbing changes in it too, where they've changed the emphasis, they've changed the characters and changed the emphasis of the story. Yeah, I'm digging that too. I mean, if it was one thing that would get me excited, it would be if this Dead Space remaster remake is a beautiful game visually. I would be all up for buying that again. And I would be all in for that movie if he was writing and directing it. Absolutely. Yes, that raw 70s. Give the meat and give it to me raw. I actually made a little video just where I mixed those phrases into the old Pipkins tune, Give Me That Ding. It wasn't particularly funny. I just felt some of those phrases from Lord of the Rings, Fiasco, House of Power Rings, Lord of the Cock Rings, whichever it's called, Power, Rings of Power. Some of the phrases I mixed into that tune just as an exercise in audio mixing for me, and I thought it was relatively amusing. But and as of course, most of dwarves are all Scottish for some reason, which it's true, we're all pretty short. So I can do the accent, give it the meat and give it to me raw. Back to The Witcher 4. So yeah, the recent investor call from CD Projekt Red confirmed that the next Witcher installment will be the first of a trilogy of mainline games that will come under the franchise. But they're also doing 2 additional titles set within the Witcher universe, with set to begin development, codenamed Project Sirius and Project Canis Majoris. So they're going for constellations for sure. They are going to be developed externally from CD Projekt Red, so I believe that probably that's because their resources are limited in house. They always were. They weren't a huge studio. It's not like they had thousands of people on board. But look what they did with the Witcher series, with that core team. Many of that core team left, of course, and they are one of they formed their own new group. one of which is getting one of those spin-offs to develop. They're going to offer exciting new twists to the established gameplay formula of The Witcher. For example, it is reported that Sirius will offer a comprehensive form of multiplayer as well as single-player gameplay, while Canis Majoris will be a more traditional story-driven experience. Plus, they're working on an update of Witcher 3 for current-gen consoles. This would all sound great. I'm not a big multiplayer fan, so Sirius doesn't necessarily appeal to me, but what is it going to be about? That's my key question. What are these stories going to be about? What is the next trilogy going to be? And I have issues because CD Projekt Red, probably because they don't have the funding, and they certainly lost a lot of money with the 2077 fiasco in the beginning. I'm sure they've gained it back because it has been a big sales success in the end. They've gone full on with the ESG funding, boasting about it on their website, boasting about it on the investor calls. They've adopted all the language, they've adopted the mottos and the slogans, and they've said this will impact the games. So we're going to see possibly, I mean, the Witcher games were brilliant because they were not woke. They had lots of toxicity in them. They certainly had strong characters of various types. So to me, the story already had built into it enough diversity to cover things. And plus, it's an Northern Eastern European set of stories. So it did reflect that origin. As we've seen with Rings of Power, that doesn't seem to matter to certain people. So I'm extremely worried about what this adoption of ESG will mean to the quality of the games, to the storytelling, and to their approach to the fans who've loved those games for various reasons for various years. I don't particularly mind the inclusion of certain characters and storylines, as long as those stories are good and organic and not forced, and as long as they do not twist the original source material of the books. So yeah, Lindsay, I'm extremely concerned about that. So whilst on the one hand, I'm interested, and they've gone for that money because I think they had to, and they've enthusiastically swallowed the messaging, as they've been ordered to by those who hand out that money. So these announcements about games would, if it had been the CD Projekt Red of old, had me relatively excited again. I would be reserving judgment till I'd seen things. But like ESG is usually, for me, the kiss of death for storytelling. You're no longer telling us the Borg of wokeness. It's no longer storytelling. You're getting the message, as my Scottish compatriot would say, the message. I've got my echo button here. And I don't want the message. I want stories. I don't. You can have stories that have a wide range of people and characters and personalities in them without the message. So yeah, I'm now on hold. I mean, I did buy Cyberpunk 2077 before this stuff was announced, so I may have thought twice about that. On the other hand, I'm willing to give that game a chance because it's... I mean, if you look at that game, the amount of diversity in it is incredible. I mean, you're talking about a world where you can literally be anything you really want with cybernetics and so on. It's the story that should come first, and that money is poison. So whilst, plus they've opened a studio hub in Boston, which isn't exactly a city that inspires original thinking to me, and I forgive people from Boston who are not woke as hell for me saying that, but I think their hiring practices are going to, like all the studios that have gone this way, are going to drive the story telling downwards and they'll drive everything else up. So we'll see. However, these games will not be here for some time, so we need to see what they're going to do. But that ESG money could well be the kiss of death for CD Projekt Red. And to be honest, they did it to themselves with the mishandling of Cyberpunk 2077, which should have done properly, would have been huge. So, a couple of other quick things. The future of online cloud gaming. Not that, and that's not something I've really done a lot. I mean, I'm not into that. I'm not a multiplayer guy anyway, and I like to play my games installed on my machines. Well, I've got a old PS4 which I still use for a couple of things, but I've got a full gaming PC that I built. I build my own gaming PCs, and just finished one couple of years ago, which is still pretty up to date, other than the video card, which now they're getting to the point I may be able to buy a new one because they're not $2,000 and 6-month wait. And I've got this fantastic gaming laptop I use for my YouTubing and streaming as well. But I'm not into cloud gaming per se. I'm not into mobile handheld gaming either. But Google is shutting down Stadia. Now, if Google, the size of a company like Google, cannot make a success of something like a game streaming service like Stadia, then I'm not quite sure who could. But I don't think this is an uncommon thing. I think others that are in this area are struggling. I know that EA and EA and other studios, Bethesda and others, would like to do a lot of this. But Stadia is going by the wayside, so doesn't bother me, doesn't affect me in any way, never used it. So I'm not against gaming streaming. I think that I still am a good fan of the good old hold a copy of it in your hand if you can, or if not, at least a copy that's playable digitally offline so that it can't be removed from your machine in any way, or switched off in any way. So yeah, Xbox Game Pass, which I think is the best chance of being huge, given the number of games that Microsoft studios that Microsoft have bought and the number of properties they own. Nvidia, GeForce Now, Amazon Luna, which is one I've barely looked at, so I need to find out more about that. I think the first two mentioned there do have a good chance of surviving and prospering. I mean, it's so much is done online. Why not gaming? It's not necessarily my model, but Google seems to do an awful lot of this. Launches something, throws some shit behind it, gets bored with it, it goes away. And then clearly it just didn't have the traction, it didn't have the games in it people wanted. Doesn't affect me, so fair enough. So there's a couple of other things I'm keeping my eye on about games that are coming out. A game I'm not going to show any of right now because I'm waiting for updated news on. Would be Crimson Desert. Excuse me while I there hasn't been any particular new updates on that game for a couple of years now, which could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. They could be getting on with working on it, or they could just be running out of cash and they've not got anywhere because their updates have been few and far between for a year or two. It is a game I'm interested in though, because I like RPGs, single player RPGs. Now Bethesda. We need to talk about Bethesda. The problem in the room. Problem in any room. Bethesda. Hey, Das Wolfen. How are you, buddy? Thank you for joining this off-the-cuff impromptu live stream. Yeah, there's at least 9 people watching right now, and I appreciate you all very much. Thank you for listening to my inane old ramblings. But you're gonna, hey, I'm gonna make them anyway. I'm gonna ramble anyway. Ramble on. Cheers, Thoth, buddy. I was a huge Fallout. Still, I'm a huge Fallout fan. Not 76 per se. Fallout New Vegas, which ironically, of course, wasn't made by was made on the side, but has proved to be one of, if not my favorite game of all time, it's certainly one of them. Fallout 3 I loved. Fallout 4 was a disappointment in many ways, but it still had some good stuff, and I did play it for quite a while. Skyrim I absolutely adored. I played Oblivion and Morrowind. So there's few things that Bethesda could do well and used to do well. And I'm certainly, again, I'm not getting overhyped and I'm not buying pre-orders or getting into the hype in any way, but there are a few things that they're working on that I'm at least interested in. One of them is Starfield. Basic idea, of course, of a large space-based science fiction universe that you could do all sorts of things in appeals to me. I'm into sci-fi, I'm into space-based stuff, and I do like open world RPG type games. So I am interested in it. I have big concerns. Yes, Obsidian, exactly. But what I've seen of Starfield so far, it actually looks pretty good. And this particular article is about some of the speech and speech-based play, which is huge in Bethesda games. Yeah, the Fallout 4 characters that I particularly, there was one or two that were really good. Some of them were I could take or leave. But so this particular article is it says a lot of things that I like. I mean, so Bethesda Softworks exec producer Todd Howard shared more about the studio's upcoming outer space epic Starfield in a recent video chat, which you should go and look if you're into the game, you're interested in the game. Go and have a look at that. It is interesting. And whether or not he considers it hard sci-fi. So hard science fiction in a very broad sense is sci-fi that commits heavily to scientific accuracy. The definition is unavoidably subjective, certainly as in novels and movies to some extent, but Kim Stanley Robinson's Aurora, for instance, takes great pains to think through stuff like soil composition, astrophysics, and chemistry in ways that impact the plot, and I absolutely love that, Aurora. Star Wars, on the other hand, doesn't go out of its way to explain lightsabers, possibly because they can't be explained. And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I don't have a problem with things saying, well, for the purposes of this story, you got to suspend your disbelief. In the case of Starfield, Howard said that it is more hard to us, but added that it's a video game first and foremost, so concessions have to be made. I absolutely agree with that. If you're talking about a game that relies on you being able to travel light year distances away to do things, hell, even in a particular solar system, you've got to have a way that allows you to get there, and it's going to break hard science. So we were really into fuel and how the gravity drive works, Howard says in the video, and I'm reading papers on quantum physics and bending space in front of you. You don't actually warp, you bend the space and bring the space towards you. And so we were playing that, it became very punitive to the player. Your ship would run out of fuel and the game would just stop. Well, leaving aside that whilst we're all very keen on the idea of warping and bending space in order to beat the speed of light and travel faster, the amount of energy, current scientific things, as the amount of energy that would take would be incomprehensibly large, and the amount of radiation produced would be phenomenally dangerous. So whether you call that hard science or not, is the idea of light faster than light travel, I think, is always at this point going to have to be taken as we're gonna give you this device and it's going to allow you to do that. Otherwise, there is no story. So they've made which I think is a reasonable decision, that developers in the game have changed the design so ships cannot run out of fuel, but they can be limited how far they can travel in a single run. And I actually think that's a good idea. You should not be able to. I think endless space and Destiny. a couple of games have done this where you can only go so far in one jump. And I think that's a reasonable compromise. Because you can't go faster than light. The captain is here, and he's got some fantastic views on and has broken down this things like time travel faster than light travel. So I'm willing to accept for the purposes of a story or playing a game that there is a MacGuffin, if you call it that device, which allows you to do certain things, because otherwise there would be no game. So how do you handle that? If you take that as the premise for the start of the game, how do you handle that mechanic within the game? So I think the not being able to travel too far in one go is a good idea. Moving on from that, he's talking now about the classic Bethesda style dialogue. Hey, Purple. Good to see you here, Captain Purple. Good to see you too. Great to see you both. Howard also said that Starfield has gone back to a classic Bethesda style dialogue, and that's one of the things we loved about Oblivion, Morrowind, Fallout, was that dialogue. The choices that you got to make, and the fact that they did make a difference. Now, I think in Fallout 4, they diluted that a lot. They didn't make that much difference in the end, many of the choices you could make. I think there needs to be impactful choices, and there needs to be choices you can only make if you've done certain things. So that's great. I like to see that they're talking about a persuasion mechanism here. They're talking about there are 250,000 lines of dialogue in total, all voice acted so far. I think I'm actually not sure whether you as the protagonist have actually got some a voice or whether it's just mute. I wasn't so keen on the fact that you had a voice in Fallout 4. I liked it before when it was mute. Anyway, that's just me. So this looks good. Certainly looking to see more, but you're spending points to persuade NPCs. It feels natural. I kind of like that. So keen to see more of what happens with Starfield. Also keen to see where they're going with Elder Scrolls 6. Skyrim, a lot of people were less keen on it than Oblivion and Morrowind. I actually played that Skyrim first, so I spent about a year playing it. So I do have a love for that game. Certainly enjoyed. I like crafting and looting, crafting, collecting, upgrading. So I loved all those aspects of that game. So let's see what everyone's saying. Fallout 4 was good, could have been great, and it's certainly greater with mods when you play it with mods. Das Wolfed, the only game that I have more time in than is World of Warcraft, and you have 875 days of playtime in that. Yeah, that's quite a bit. I think I've probably, with New Vegas, Skyrim, Mass Effect, the series, the entire series, Witcher 3, I've probably put in thousands of hours. I'm not sure how many days. I know that probably 2 or 3 weeks worth of time on each game if you added it all together. I know that I played Skyrim for months. I played Fallout New Vegas for months. Yeah, Captain, internal consistency. Yeah, that's the point. I know you've made it before, is if you're going to do something to say, here's our device, you at least have to stick with that and not break that consistency and go around it. And I know when it comes to time travel, faster than light, other things that have been done in properties, that they've gone around that and broken it and changed the rules because they felt they needed, how do we get out of this? It's the how do we get out of this trap. So I want to see the game have some consistency. Agree with that entirely. Hey, Dildo. Good to see you. So yeah, quite interested. I'm willing to give. I'm not pre-ordering anything. I ain't going to spend a ton of money, and I'm going to wait until everything is out and it works and people that I trust have reviewed it. But I'm certainly keen on Starfield. I'll certainly always be keen to see what they do with Elder Scrolls. There are some encouraging signs coming out of there, but yeah, don't trust, verify. I do hope they have a settlement system of some kind in Starfield. Yeah. I did too. I built some incredible settlements. I must go back into the game and see how they're getting on because I don't think I've been in it for about a year. But I love the building part of it. Um, as I say, I love crafting, looting, crafting, collecting, building, upgrading. Is a big part of those games for me. That's why I've never been quite so much of a shoot 'em up game fan because I like to take the time to kind of look around and do stuff. That's just why open world RPGs absolutely appeal to me. And a game like Witcher 3, I think that did that really well. Um, Skyrim did it really well. Fallout 4 did have some fantastic building mechanisms in it. It's a shame there was some pretty light on some of the characterization. So I've been told by Mrs. Rockfan that there is food awaiting me. So I am going to wrap it up there, I think. Thanks to everybody for just joining towards the end there. There was one other thing I want to talk about, and I think I'll leave it for a second stream, another gaming stream, which is the very soon upcoming God of War Ragnarok. Now, I loved the last God of War, which was a Sony PlayStation exclusive. I thought the story was fantastic. Everything about it was great. So I was keen to see the next one. I have my hopes, but like all these things, I have my doubts too. But I think that's worthy of a video or a live stream in its own right. But it certainly is very close to coming out early November. I've seen the trailers and watched some of the early released gameplay trailers, and I'm encouraged by them. But also in this day and age, there are a couple of things that may have been added to the story or the game that I'm not so, that make me a little bit more worried. I mean, we're talking here about Norse and other European-based mythologies. So what may be done to them that might not fit with that ethos in that world. So yeah, I'm going to go eat. I would like to thank you all for being here. Stephen, Lord Thoth, Das Wolfen, Ancient Dildo, the Captain, who I would dearly love to stream with again. There's a few things we need to talk about. If you will have me on his show. Purple, good to see you, lass. Lindsay was here. Good to see you. Just coming. Oh, it's been brought to me. Thank you. So, for everyone else, to whoever else who I've missed mentioning that was here, Stephen, Deleted Scenes, Alf Jeebus, Stephen Ransom, Lolix Linux, Lowspec Linux, Sean Estep, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it very much. Hope you all have a great day, and I'm sure I will see you all again somewhere later. But till then, take care.